Let's go over how building muscles hypertrophy works, the way that you know exactly what it takes to build muscle with resistance bands as I promised. How muscles grow. When you work out, you're putting greater stress, tension on your muscles than what they are used to normally. This damages your muscles, creating microscopic tears to your muscle fibers. After you work out, your body repairs the damaged muscle fiber through a cellular process that fuses the muscle fibers back together while forming new muscle protein strands. In the process, ultimately this increases the thickness and size of your muscles, and this is what we call as muscle hypertrophy. However, without proper recovery, which includes a high protein diet, sleep and rest days, your muscles will not grow effectively. And without increasing the stress you place on your muscles over time, your growth will plateau, unfortunately. So, what are the requirements for building muscle with resistance bands only? Here are the three main requirements of building muscle in order so that we can make sure you're giving your muscle the chance to grow and build mass when working out with resistance bands. Number one, tension and overload. Very important for your muscles to grow. You need to place resistance on them in the form of tension. This is what we mean by putting stress on the muscles, a very common word. The tension on your muscles can be caused by gravity, external loads or elastic tension. So you can achieve this with your body weight alone, free weights, machines or even resistance bands. This is the first phase of muscle growth. So long as the tension is sufficient, your muscles will respond. Now, factors that relate to this kind of tension on the muscle. Number one, amount of resistance that we put on the muscle. Number two, TUT, the time under tension. Number three, rest between time under tension. And number four, volume of your workout. As for the overloading the muscle, this means you're creating tension on your muscles of which they are not used to. Your muscles will adapt also over time, so they can manage the added stress. Thus, you will need to progressively put your muscles under more stress as they begin to adapt gradually. Adequate recovery is also very important. The next phase of muscle growth is recovery. It is essential that you take rest, eat well, take plenty of water and sleep for maximize muscle growth. Let's talk about progressive overload methods with resistance bands. When you first start working out, pretty much any exercise that you do will be an effective overload because your muscles are simply not used to doing anything beyond your normal day of routine of walking or sitting or standing, etc. As your muscles adapt, you will need to increase the stress you put on them. There are multiple methods to go about progressive overload. The best methods for progressive overloading with resistance bands, what are these? Let's study them. Increasing time under tension and intensity. This is another aspect. This simply means your sets are no longer the same that you can do by adding reps. Let's talk about the best methods for progressive overloading with resistance bands. And we'll also capture increasing TUT and intensity. This simply means your sets are longer. You can do this by adding reps or changing your tempo. With the resistance bands, the best tempo is 2:1 or 4:1. So 2 seconds concentric, which means the upward motion, 1 second hold at the top, and 4 seconds eccentric contraction, which is the downward motion, is enough to create an explosive workout where you can add tension. Let's talk about increasing volume of your workouts. You can do this by adding more sets to your workout and or more exercises to your workout, even if you're working with resistance bands. You have to also focus on decreasing the rest time. Less rest time equals more stress on your muscles. Increasing the frequency of your workouts. For example, if you work out 3 times a week, up to maybe you can change it up to 4 times a week or 5 times a week. At some point, you can even do 2 workouts in a day, not necessarily both with resistance bands, but maybe one could be a cardio workout in the morning and maybe the evening can have your resistance training workout with the resistance bands. That said, listen to your body so that you are not overtraining. The last thing we want is overstressing your muscles. You can also look to focus on increasing resistance. Using a band with higher resistance is an obvious method. But however, with bands, it can be very hard to determine exactly how much resistance are you using. We'll explain that more in details in probably a next video. Otherwise, this is going to be a never-ending video, this chapter. And finally, you should also keep track of your progressive overload with bands. All in all, if you want to see continued results in your muscle growth, you need to progressively overload. A big part of progressive overload is keeping a strict routine. If you constantly change your exercise, workouts and overall plans, you won't be able to progressively overload. So anyone who says you need to keep changing things up to see growth is wrong. The only thing you need to change is the time under tension, play up with your volume, rest timing, frequency and resistance level. These are the only changes you need to do. However, that being said, after 2 or 3 months, it is ideal to give yourself a few days to a week of rest and then switch routines. Otherwise, you will be stagnant with the same routine.